Hello and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. So I'll just give people a moment to all get logged in. Oh, I'm hitting the record. Make sure that I don't miss that out. Add people in. And sorry, I've got so many windows to keep track of because we've invited in some guests to join us for this week's live Q&A session. Don't worry, I'm holding a guitar, but this is definitely a harmonica Q&A session. So if this is your first ever Q&A, then just say a little hello in the chat. Tell us where you're watching from, and then we're going to have a little jam, which is why I've got the guitar ready. And then I will start answering harmonica questions that have been sent in advance. And then I'll answer live ones. Okay, so let's see who we have in the room. So we've got Tom watching from Lancaster, Tony in York in the UK, Carl in Portsmouth, Graham from Wimbledon. We've got Carl in Birmingham, Andy from Weybridge. I'm assuming you've all got fabulous summery weather, hopefully. Let's see. We've got Ken in Colorado. We've got Mark from Canada in Quebec. We've got Jose Antonio in Madrid. We've got someone from Costa Rica. Adam from New Mexico. This is very cool, very exciting. Suma from India. We've got Essa in Finland. This is really exciting. We've got a very international group of people today. We've got Deck in the West Midlands, Nick in San Francisco, Knut in Norway. Very cool. So I'm not going to say hello to absolutely everybody individually, otherwise we'll never answer any harmonica questions. But I will get started with a little bit of a jam. So let's put it to the viewers. What key are we going to jam in? Let me know. Type it in the chat, and the first key is the one that we will do. And remember, it's the key that I'm going to play on guitar, not the key of harmonica. So Graham wants to play in the key of E, so we will play in the key of E. Now remember, we're playing, the guitar is in the key of E, and that means that you're probably going to want an A harmonica in second position. So I'm just going to type that in. Key of E, A harp in second, or D harp in third. So let's, okay. Can everybody hear my guitar all okay? Yeah? All right. So we're going to play in the key of E. I want to do a slow blues. I just did the improv Q&A, and we did a foot stomping shuffly blues, and I'm now ready for the slow blues in the key of E. So I'm going to take it from the 5 chord and count you through the changes. So grab your A harps and let's play in second position. So starting on the 5. And a 1 to the turnaround. One. With a quick change to the 4. 1. 4. This is the slowest blues ever. 1. Up to the 5. 4. Turn around. All right, you're on your own now. Oh yeah. Okay, big ending. Big ending. All right. Beautiful. You all sounded fantastic. And hopefully you're feeling all nicely warmed up. Let's look at some questions that have been sent into the Harmonica School forum. First of all, just going to check that everyone's still hearing. All right. Very cool. Okay, so Mike has asked a great question. Mike has said, I've noticed that a lot of players replace their standard combs with custom combs such as Blue Moon and Andrew Zajac. What difference does this make? And is it the best way to improve a harmonica without going for full customization by a harp technician? That is a very, very good question. So there are a couple of things to think about with replacing harmonica combs. So I've actually got a bunch of Andrew Zajac and also some Blue Moon combs. So here I have a Marine Band with an Andrew Zajac comb. This is actually an Andrew Zajac. I think it's a semi-custom, so it's not a full custom. It's kind of his off-the-shelf custom, but it's got an Andrew Zajac comb. This is a Joe Spires Suzuki Manji with Blue Moon combs. So they're both harmonicas that have been customized. But what I found with harmonicas that don't get customized but are quite airy feeling, ones that need quite a lot of effort to bend, you can hear a lot of the air coming through. The comb is a great place to start. Replacing the comb can make a huge difference to the playability of a harmonica, but there's not much point on certain types of harmonicas. So it's not really going to make a huge amount of difference on a Suzuki Manji or a Suzuki Olive or a Marine Band Deluxe or a Marine Band Crossover. It's probably not going to make a huge amount of difference on a Zeidel 1847. But it might make quite a lot of difference on some other types of harmonicas. So maybe a standard Marine Band, ones with the nailed rivets rather than screws. Some of the kind of lower end Suzukis, Lee Oscars. I actually personally really like how a Special 20 plays with a custom comb. It's a good place to start. But it's not the be all end all. And what quite often you'll find is that part of the thing that makes the new comb upgrade such a big upgrade is actually flat sanding the draw reed plate. So that's the bottom reed plate before you fit it to the comb. And you could just do that for the comb that was there before. Another thing to think about is the comfort of playing. So a lot of these replacement combs maybe have rounded tines, so they're less sharp on your mouth, and that can make quite a big difference to the comfort and playability. They're not going to completely transform a really good harmonica into an even better harmonica. It's just kind of part of the puzzle. But it definitely will make a difference on Golden Melodies. I absolutely love Golden Melodies with replacement combs. That's something to think about. Lauren has asked a follow-up question, which is, do the materials on the comb make a difference as well? So for me, they really don't from a kind of sound point of view. There's not a huge amount of difference. It kind of comes down to playability. So, your kind of main comb materials, especially for aftermarket combs, will be wood, resin. Andrew Zajac does paper and resin, and his combs are absolutely amazing. Korean, which is what kitchen work surfaces are made from, brass, aluminium. Now, personally, I don't like brass and aluminium because I find them too heavy. That's all it is. I don't particularly like playing a heavy-feeling harmonica. Loads of people love playing a heavy-feeling harmonica, so it's down to your personal preference. I really like anything that's kind of wood-ish. So the paper resin of Zajac combs or nicely sealed wooden combs or wood resin all feel great to me. But in terms of the sound, I don't think it makes a particularly big difference to the sound. The reed material makes a huge difference, and the cover plate material makes a huge difference, but not the comb. But I know that there's going to be lots of debate about this, and loads of people will disagree with me. Okay, so Ellen has asked to follow up about this, which is, she's saying, I just got a marine band, but I find that the wooden comb is too dry. It doesn't slide as easily as the Special 20. Will it become better? If not, I'll maybe take a new comb. Okay, so this is something that might just be down to your personal preference. So you might just not like that style of comb. So I don't have any Special 20s handy, but a Special 20 has a recessed comb, and so you have more comb sticking out and you're not actually in contact with the reed plates. Whereas the marine band is what's known as a sandwich design. So I don't know if you can see that, but there is reed plate, then comb, then reed plate, and you're actually touching the reed plate when you're playing. And that might feel sticky to some people. Personally, I hate the feel of recessed combs. I just don't enjoy them for my own playing. So I always have a sandwich style harmonica. So it might just be that you're not into that feel, Ellen. Something to think about. Okay, so next question is from Nick. Oh, got some more people to let in. Nick has said, Tomlin, for the first time, I have hit a bit of a wall. I'm in advanced beginner month 6, and for whatever reason, I'm having trouble really internalizing the lower octave root notes and improvising the pivot notes. I know what the root notes are, but when I practice, I get it for a bit, but then play the wrong note where the root note should be. Any suggestions? Okay, so think about what you've already learned. So let's grab a C harmonica. You know that your root notes, the root notes that you already know in second position will be the 2 draw for the 1 chord, the 4 blow for the 4 chord, and the 4 draw for the 5 chord. Okay, so you know those, and you've probably got quite a strong sense of those notes being required over the chord changes through the 12-bar blues. Now, I've asked you to learn to play the lower octave root notes, which changes what you've got on the 4 chord and the 5 chord to the 1 blow and the 1 draw. So you've probably got quite a lot of muscle memory that's saying that you want to go somewhere else. Now, in the short term, I'd say that you probably just need to take a little bit of a break. If you're finding that you're making lots of mistakes, you're probably just getting a little bit fatigued by it. But in the longer term, you're going to have to do exactly what you did to really internalize the root notes in the middle octave on the 4 hole. You're going to have to do the same down on the 1 hole and just force yourself. And every time you make the mistake, stop and kind of restart at that same point. So stop and start at that chord change until you get really used to it. And it will get easier and easier, I promise. One thing I would suggest is if you use the 12-bar blues practice videos that I've got, you'll see that you've got there's a video with the lower octave root notes highlighted as the chords change. That'll help you to really sink in with it. But yeah, definitely play a little bit of, have a little bit of a break, just to let things mull. I find that a lot of my practice actually happens when I'm sleeping and subconsciously, and having a bit of a break's quite good for that. Okay. So next question is from Rhonda. Rhonda has said, I'm trying to bend the 4 draw on a D Special 20 harmonica. It sounds like it's doing an overblow. Am I using too much force? Brilliant question. So if you're getting a kind of overblow type sound on a draw note, you're not overblowing. I can tell you that absolutely unequivocally, unless you're playing holes 7, 8, 9, and 10. Then you might be doing something called an overdraw. But the notes, the draw notes between holes 1 and 6 just can't act like that. They don't have any way to overblow on a draw. It's just not how it's set up physically. So what you are probably doing is trying to play that 4 draw bend too hard. what you'll find is that on a D harmonica versus a C harmonica, you need a little bit less air pressure because the bend is a little bit higher in pitch. So you don't need to make your vocal cavity quite so big to get the bend. So try playing a little bit more gently. And if you find that you're hitting that point where it's fighting you, I can't get it to kind of squeak like an overblow, but that point where it's fighting you, you're just applying too much bending power. So slow right down and try and apply less bending power. And play nice and gently. And this is a good point to think about with any different key harmonica, and for everyone. When you first move away from a C harmonica, whether you're moving up to a D harmonica or down to maybe an A harmonica, they're all going to react differently. They're going to play differently to the C harmonica. The premise is the same, the technique is the same, but it feels different, and you'll need to get used to it. So sometimes it's just a question of putting away your C harmonica for a while and only playing the D harmonica, and only playing things that you're already comfortable playing. So don't worry about learning new stuff. Just worry about getting comfortable with that harmonica. I vividly remember years and years ago when I was teaching loads and loads face-to-face, and almost all my students were working on C harmonicas because they were all beginners. And then I had a gig doing a studio session, recording some harmonica for a video game of all things. And I needed to play a G harmonica. That was what they wanted. And I got really tired playing the G harmonica because I just wasn't used to doing it because I was spending so much time just teaching on a C. So I made a very concerted effort to only play on my G harp I must have done it for a month, maybe 6 weeks, just to kind of build up those harmonica muscles. So that's quite a good thing to do if you're getting tired playing on a specific key. Okay. Let's see the next question. So next question from Jan. So Jan is saying, in my last post I played Continuons à danser, but the intro was too fast for me, so I played it at 90 BPM instead of 120 BPM. But after that, 90 BPM was too slow to get a catchy melody. So my question is it acceptable to play more slowly and then after that to play at the right speed? And besides, I realized that unconsciously I had increased the speed while playing the melody. I can't change the metronome speed to 120 while I'm playing. Any tips for playing at a steady rhythm of 120 after 90? Okay, so unfortunately, I'm going to say that you should stick to the same tempo. It's really, really important. So if you can only play part of the song at 90 BPM, then you should play everything at 90 BPM until you can play everything faster. Don't slow down or speed up depending on which bits you find harder. All that shows is that there are parts of the tune that you need to spend more time practicing to increase the speed. There's no kind of shortcut. And this is something I see a lot when people are presenting tunes that they've learnt. They generally play through the easy bits really quickly, and then they play through the hard bits really slowly. And for me, it's absolutely essential to maintain a solid pulse, even if that means quite often that you're leaving loads and loads of space. So let's imagine that I'm playing a slow blues, and my tempo is something like this: 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So I'm still leaving loads of space. I'm not rushing to get to that 5 chord. So don't squeeze all those licks together and leave the space out. I know that's not what you're doing, Jan, but I thought it was important to make that point for the changing of tempos and not really sticking to a solid pulse. Pulse is absolutely everything. Okay, so Atharvi YouTube is asking whether I'm reading chat here or from somewhere different. So what I'm doing is I'm actually reading the questions that my students sent in into the Harmonica School forum first of all. So I'm answering their questions, and then what I'll do is I'll have a look at questions that are coming in live after that, and I'll answer the students' questions first of all, but I'll answer a few from YouTube as well. I hope that helps. All right. So let's see. Next question is from Lauren. Lauren has said, I have a question about breathing. Is it okay to let air out through your nose while exhaling on a blow note? Same with on a draw note. Is it okay to breathe in through the nose, or should all the air be going through the harmonica? Okay, so this is an excellent question. And it's actually one where I think I probably disagree with some pretty big harmonica teachers. I'm quite strict about making sure that my students don't breathe through their nose at all when they're playing. The reason for that is that if you open up your nose while you're playing, that changes the air pressure in the whole setup. And generally, if people are breathing through their nose as well as their mouth at the same time, they have quite a lot of difficulties in doing things like bends and vibratos and overblows and stuff like that. And it's quite difficult to get a really good tone through the instrument. So I would always try and suggest that you don't breathe through your nose while you're playing. If you want to catch a breath while you're playing, and it's in between notes, okay, you can breathe through your nose, that's totally fine. But if you're holding a long note, you'll find that really difficult to do if you don't have a completely closed circuit. So if your nose is open as well, then you're going to waste air, right? If you're finding that you're overinflating while you're playing, which a lot of people do, then you need to think about playing more gently. That's kind of cause number one. And B, think about where you're going to get the opportunity to breathe out, and then breathe out either through the harmonica or around the harmonica. So you might do something like... So I breathed out at the end of that long draw sequence. I breathed out on just a 1/4 blow. And there I just breathe through the harmonica. If you don't want to have the sound, then just pull the harmonica out a little bit further and breathe around rather than through. So there I just went and breathed around the harmonica. So that's something to think about. All right, let's have a look at questions that are coming in live. Okay, so Mike has asked a great question, which is, can I use the arpeggios in improvising in the same way that I would use the blues and pentatonic scales? So before I answer that question, let's very quickly explain what arpeggios are. So if you think about a 12-bar blues, we've got 3 chords in our 12-bar blues. And if I play a chord on my guitar, you can see very quickly, this is the 1 chord. I'm not playing 1 note. I'm playing loads of notes, and I'm actually playing 4 notes simultaneously. So if I was to play the notes of that chord separately, that would be an arpeggio. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about arpeggios. We're playing the notes of a chord. So for the 1 chord, our arpeggio is 2 draw, 3 draw, 4 draw, 5 draw. Okay, and yes, to very quickly answer your question, Mike, you can absolutely, and you absolutely should, because it's a brilliant technique, use the arpeggios to improvise, use the notes within the arpeggios over the chord changes. So if we're playing over the one chord, as well as using the blues scale or the major pentatonic scale, I could just use the notes in the arpeggio. So I could do something like this. And then change to the 4 chord and do the same thing. So there I just played the arpeggio notes. 1 blow, 2 blow, 3 blow, 3 draw half step bend. That's what I did over the 4 chord. And then I'll come back to the 1. And then I'll do the same over the 5 chord. So there, I did a full 12 bar blues only playing arpeggio notes. So I'll do that again without interrupting myself so you can hear how it works. A 1, a 1, a 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it starts to sound a little bit like an exercise if you're only using the arpeggio notes. But if you start using the arpeggio notes with some blues scale or with some major pentatonic, it starts to sound really musical. So let's try that. 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you can kind of really hear the chord changes because you're outlining them using choice notes from the arpeggios. But yeah, it's almost like having a different scale for each chord. Great question. All right. So Graham's asking, if you're going to change the comb on a standard marine band, it's a big job already because you'll need a screw conversion anyway, right? Yes. So standard marine band is nailed together. And if you want to put a new comb in it, you'll need to convert it to screws, which there are definitely people who do it. I know that John Cook does it. Andrew Zajac will do it. I'm sure there are other people who'll do it. But to be honest, it's really worthwhile just buying a Marine Band Deluxe, because they come pre-screwed, and actually the combs are really good. They're sealed, so you might find that you don't even need to change the comb on a Marine Band Deluxe. Okay, so Nicholas is asking, I play a crossover in D when I'm practicing Hoochie Coochie Man, and sometimes when I play 3-draw bends, I get a slight whistle. Is this me or a defective comb? Okay, so that's due to something called torsional vibration, which when a reed, normally when a reed's vibrating, it should just vibrate up and down. But if it vibrates, if you have torsional vibration, it vibrates from side to side as well. And that's where you get that kind of squealing sound. And it's basically your harmonica is fighting you. So the 3-draw kind of whole step bend on a harmonica is actually the 3-blow reed that should be vibrating. But your draw reed is trying to get involved. And so you've got that torsional vibration, which is creating that whistling sound. So a lot of it really just comes down to playing technique, but a lot of harmonicas are more prone to it than others. So the crossover I'm actually quite surprised to hear that a crossover is having that sound. Generally, Lee Oscar and Suzuki are very prone to it. But anyway, the thing that you need to work on is being able to play with a very relaxed body and a nice solid control of your airflow from your diaphragm. And the way to practice this is to practice very gently hitting and holding that 3-draw whole step bend for as long and as solidly as you can. So doing something like this. Two, three. And really make sure that you're not hitting it really hard and thin. Keep it nice and relaxed and warm and gentle. With minimum airflow, and really work on alleviating all that tension, because your harmonica wants to fight you. It really, really does. And there are ways that you can tweak your harmonica reeds to make it less likely to do that. But I'm kind of the school of thought that if your technique is really, really good and you practice this stuff, then you'll be able to pick up any harmonica and do okay with it. And then when you pick up a really good harmonica that's been customized, you'll be able to do amazing things. Whereas if you get into the habit of needing to have a perfectly set up harmonica, it's going to become a bit of a crutch. So I think it is worthwhile refining and honing technique to get that. Yeah, great question. Okay, so next question. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to. I will answer student questions, but I would like to pick some cool questions from YouTube as well, just for today. I see a very interesting question from Julian. Julian has said, would you say it's better to learn the diatonic harmonica before playing chromatic, or does it not make a difference? So I can only speak from my personal experience, which is that I was a diatonic player and only recently started learning chromatic harmonica. But I found that transitioning from diatonic to chromatic was quite easy in some ways, because a lot of the muscle memory was already there. I already knew how to play clean notes. That helped a lot. I already knew how to control my breathing. And there were also scale shapes that were already there from playing diatonic. So I think that it's really beneficial having that to start from. And I think the mistake that I made for years is considering that the diatonic harmonica and the chromatic harmonica were completely different instruments, when I think that really you should think of them as just part of being a harmonica player. So play some diatonic, play some chromatic, and know what you can do better on each instrument. There are tricks on chromatic harmonica that are very cool that you'll never get on a diatonic, and vice versa. So do I think it's easier to start on one rather than the other? I think from my point of view, I've definitely benefited from a strong understanding of the diatonic, and I've used that to learn the chromatic. But I feel that you could probably do the same the other way around. You could use a strong understanding of the chromatic and switch to diatonic. The only thing that you might not find as easy as a chromatic player moving to diatonic is controlling your bends. Because although you can bend on a chromatic, traditionally you don't bend quite as much. That's not really the point of the instrument, because you can get the pitch by pressing the button on the side. So yeah, I think adding chromatic into your arsenal as a diatonic player is probably a little bit easier than starting with the chromatic. But it really comes down to what you're trying to achieve. There are certain genres of music which are going to be a million times easier on chromatic. If you know that you want to be a hardcore jazz player and play over complicated chord changes, you can do it on a diatonic harmonica. Howard Levy does a great job. Konstantin Reinfeld does a great job. But it's not easy. Whereas on a chromatic harmonica, it's much easier. It's not easy. It's still a complicated genre of music, but you're giving yourself a much better chance. So think about what you're trying to get from it. If you want to be a solid blues player, which is where I come from, I come from the blues school, then diatonic is going to be the place to start, and adding in the chromatic is fairly logical. I still have to practice a lot before it's going to be usable, and I was practicing a lot until my son was born last year, and I will start practicing again, I promise. All right, let's have a look. Andy is asking, what are your thoughts on the Zeidel 1847 versus a custom harp? Great question. So I'm a big fan of the Zeidel 1847. I'm actually going to do a video on 1847 soon because I think they're brilliant harmonicas. I really like just the classic with the wooden comb. Now, I went to a harmonica workshop a couple of years ago, and I was chatting to the Zeidel rep, and he actually customized a Zeidel 1847 for me while I was there. And I actually prefer the uncustomized 1847 to the customized one. I found that it played better. Personally, for my playing, I think that they play really well out of the box, and I haven't had a bad experience with one so far. And I think generally, not just 1847s, harmonicas these days are so good. All the big brands, Suzuki, Hohner, Zeidel, they're all making fantastic harmonicas out of the box. And that wasn't the case when people started customizing harmonicas in the late 80s, early 90s. Joe Falisco, one of the pioneers of harmonica customization, did it because the quality control from Hohner, etc., was so poor that you had to customize your harmonicas to get them playing well. But a lot of those people, including Joe, have been involved with the brands and have kind of led to all of these advances in the machining and the setting up. So out-of-the-box harmonicas from all of these companies are really good. So I don't think getting a custom harmonica is quite as important as it would have been 20 years ago. I really don't. Okay. Let's see the next question. Okay, so Mars has said, what is the relationship to learning melodies, which I rarely do, with riffing on blues improv? Is there a benefit? Yes, absolutely. So if you think of, let's go back to one of my favorite analogies, which is learning to speak, and think about a baby starts imitating sounds, then they start imitating words and start saying words, and then they start copying sentences that you say or little phrases, and then eventually they can start improvising conversation. They can put thoughts together into relatively coherent phrases, sentences, paragraphs. And it's the same kind of deal with learning to improvise on a musical instrument. Learning melodies helps to reinforce the connection between your internal ear and the instrument. And then it also gives you more vocabulary. So let's take something like Summertime. So let's take that phrase. You could quite easily improvise over a 12-bar blues using some of that melody. Okay, I deviated from a 12-bar blues. I got sucked into a kind of Summertime type backing track in my mind. But I took that one phrase and I improvised with it. And I could very happily improvise over a 12-bar blues with any melodic phrase, even if it was something that you would think was quite unexpected. Break it down, use the little bits of it that you like. Very, very useful stuff. And I'm a big believer in the more stuff outside of a blues scenario that you learn, the better a blues player you will be. I think it's quite easy to get sucked in this blues sphere, which I'm definitely guilty of, because that's pretty much all I play when I play with bands and stuff like that. So I live in a blues world, but knowing other genres has really helped, and it makes me play a little bit more outside, and I think it's more interesting for a listener. So that's something to think about. Definitely add some stuff into your practice routine, not just blues riffs. Okay, so Chris is asking, how often do I have these live streams? So we do a live Q&A session every week in the school. This is a kind of one-off, just kind of open it up for people who aren't in the school, so they get a little taster of what it's like. It's not always me, so we have a guest teacher every month as well, but there are Q&A sessions every week. So I do a couple a month. We have a guest once a month. We've got Todd Parrott once a month. And I also do one at a kind of early morning session so that I can get people from the other side of the world in as well. So yeah, very regularly. Okay, so next question is from Graham. Graham has asked, this might be a big ask for a Q&A, but any quick tips for bending whilst tongue blocking? Yeah, so you're not going to like my answer for this, my tips. Bending while lip pursing and bending while tongue blocking are exactly the same. But the big difference is very obvious. The big difference is that when you're lip pursing, your tongue has one job, and that's the bending. It's not trying to single out holes on the harmonica. Whereas when you're tongue blocking, you have two jobs, which makes it exponentially more difficult to bend at the same time as tongue blocking. So unfortunately, I don't have any clever tips or tricks other than you're just going to have to persevere with it and apply the same technique that I know you can already do on the lip purse bend. And just imagine that you're learning to bend again, because your tongue is kind of indisposed. The tip of it's going to be on the harmonica doing the tongue blocking. And then you're going to, instead of when you first start bending, your tongue pulls all the way back to hit the bend. When you're tongue blocking, your tongue's got to stay on the harmonica. So essentially you're going to have to learn to kind of push your tongue up to get the same effect, but maintaining it on the harmonica. And that's quite an interesting point. I was chatting to David Barrett about this because one of his students gave him access to an MRI machine. How crazy is this? An MRI machine to look at what happens when an amateur bends a harmonica versus a pro. And what he discovered was that when the amateur was doing the bending, so imagine someone who can bend but has only just started bending, the tongue was pulling all the way back. Whereas when a pro was bending, the tongue was staying in position, but it was lifting up in the right place for whichever bend was being hit. So that's obviously a massive advantage when you're tongue blocking, because your tongue needs to be stuck on the harmonica right at the front of your mouth. So unfortunately, there are no quick fixes for this. Tongue blockers take longer to learn how to bend, but it's exactly the same technique, and you will get there. You just got to persevere with it, if that's something that you want to do. When I started doing tongue block bends, it was definitely something that I had to kind of almost relearn how to bend. And now I switch between the two depending on what I'm trying to get out of it. Great question. Okay. So next question is from Lise. Lise has said, improvisation. Can you give us any more tips to keep inventing licks throughout a tune? What should we be thinking about to make it all a bit more natural and intuitive, please? Okay, so I'm going to say that the biggest mistake that people make when they're trying to create licks and improvise is trying to say too much. So they'll be playing, let's imagine a 24-bar solo. So that's twice round the 12-bar blues. They'll be playing a 24-bar solo, and they'll just do lick after lick after lick after lick. So they'll get something like... it doesn't make any sense. If I ask you to whistle that tune back to me, you're not going to be able to do it. There's no logic and cohesion to it. When what you need to be doing is trying to develop a theme and trying to think quite simply about what is the one idea that you're trying to convey, and think about developing. I often feel that I'm only really improvising my first phrase, and once I've done that, I kind of just want to riff on that. I want to talk about that. So I might start like, I might do a solo more like this. A 1, 2, 3. So I've got this theme that, and I'm trying to kind of come back to that every time I get to the one chord, but I'm also changing little bits of it. I'm changing the rhythm. I might be changing the tonality with my hands. I might add a couple of notes in, but I'm still trying to stick to that theme. And that makes me feel that I've maybe used one lick, maybe 2 licks for 12 bars. And then to the next 12 bars, I might take that theme, that rhythm, and move it up the scale a little bit. So I might do something. There I shifted it up an octave. So I've taken an idea and I've moved it around, but I haven't created lots and lots and lots and lots of new ideas. I would say that's my biggest piece of advice for being creative. Limit yourself. Don't do too much with it. Don't try and say too much. Try and create a theme. And then another thing, from a kind of slightly more passive point of view, if you want to get good at improvising, listen to great improvisation. So watch live performances from great blues players. It doesn't have to be harmonica players. It can be guitarists. It can be pianists. It can be saxophonists. But listen. Spend lots of time learning the language and the vocabulary. I hope that helps you, Lise. Good question. So. Chris has said your Lego Stormtrooper is awesome. Thank you. I'm a big fan. All right. Let's see. Next question from Carl. Carl has said, Tomlin, you mentioned getting fatigued with learning/practice. I found this myself over the last couple of months, hence I've decided to put the lessons on the back burner and just to learn some of your tab library lessons, to perfect lots of licks and to concentrate on playing any harp other than the C. My question is whether it's natural to get fatigued with the curriculum and to need a break. Did this sort of thing to happen to you? Yes, it happens to all musicians. So I think all teachers and musicians, we kind of paint this image of, I spent 10 years practicing 5 hours a day and I loved it and I'm now awesome. And it's just not true. Very, very few people, can manage that from a practical point of view, and very few people have the kind of stability emotionally to be able to do that. And that's not a bad thing. It's totally normal. What you'll find is that you go through periods of fits and starts where you can get really, really focused and you jump ahead loads. I think one of the most powerful times in my musical progression was after I left school and before I went to university. I went to music school for 3 months and I dropped out, and then I moved back home and I was at home for nearly 2 years, and I practiced scales like mad. I did like 5, 6, 7 hours every single day, and like this was on guitar, all of those shapes are just in my fingers. Like they're just there. And that was one of the most important parts of my musical journey. And I have never found that chunk of time, that ability to practice ever again like that. And I find kind of months here and there. The beginning of COVID was actually brilliant because we couldn't go outside, we couldn't go anywhere, I couldn't see anyone. So I was just practicing loads and it was great. But then we had a baby and, practice went out of the window, obviously. And I think that's just what life is like. And then feeling tired with it. So that's just stuff that life throws at you. And then if you're working through things for a long period of time and you're not really thinking about the fun side of it, you'll get fatigued. So I think having some fun kind of outlets is really important. I was saying this earlier during another Q&A session, but my wife notices when I'm starting to get too bogged down in practice, and she'll actually send me out to go and jam with my friends. She'll say, right, you gotta go and play, don't start practicing. So think about that. Think about what can be playful. So it can be playing with backing tracks. It can be finding a friend to jam with. It can be watching a concert. I'm not sure where you are in the world, but if you can go to a concert live in person, do it. That'll really get you excited again. If you're unable to go and see concerts live, watch them on YouTube. There are thousands of great concerts. It's totally normal, and it's a really good idea to take a break every so often and shake things up. The time when I feel most fatigued with harmonica is anytime I'm at harmonica events. So, if I'm running a workshop and I've got like 72 hours of teaching and performance and just hanging out with harmonica students and harmonica teachers, I generally leave it just being completely harmonica'd out. And I don't want to look at a harmonica for a couple of weeks. And then after that, I start thinking about the things the other teachers were playing. And I think, I really want to learn how to do that. And I might spend a couple of months working on that. But a break's really, really good. Do not worry about it. It's normal. Okay, so Gary wants to know, is there another way that you also organize your practice? So I'm intermediate month 5, but I'm thinking I don't get around to keeping on top of the stuff from month 1 or 2, like one chord blues. I feel like I'm progressing, but not maintaining. Okay, that's a great question. And I think that's something that you need to think about as a student. The more and more repertoire you have, you need to do repertoire maintenance. What I would do is every time you learn something new, get your little practice notebook. Excuse me. I've been talking for nearly 2 hours now. Excuse me. Get your little practice notebook. Okay, mine's probably upstairs. But yeah, write down every time you learn something new, like any new piece of repertoire. Write a list of it. And then once every couple of weeks or once a month, go through everything that's on your repertoire list and see if you can still play it. And you'll find that a lot of it you can, and you'll find that some of it needs to be revisited. You might need to re-listen to the original. You might need to work through the lesson. That's totally fine. And only do this with stuff that you really want to maintain in your repertoire. Be selective. You don't have to maintain everything. As a working musician, I have learned hundreds of songs that I really don't care about. I used to play in a wedding band. There are loads of songs that I really don't like from that era. There's loads of stuff that I still love, but I'm not going to waste time maintaining that repertoire. And also doing things like first dances, learning someone's special song. It's lovely seeing them get very excited about it, but there's no point me maintaining the repertoire of something that I'm probably not going to play again. And I could learn again quite quickly if I needed to. But really, really be selective. Work, add the things that you really love to your repertoire and maintain them once a fortnight, once a month, and relearn them if you need to. That's totally fine. That's what I would recommend. And also kind of think about specific parts of things that you've learned. So anytime I learn a new tune, I generally think of it as a great way to learn new repertoire for licks, for improvisation. And if there's a chunk of a tune that I can use and steal, then I will. So that's how I would approach it. Okay, let's see. Oh, this is a funny question. Chris has asked, how often do you take your harmonica apart and clean it? Well, the official answer is once every 3 months, but my harmonicas are looking very disgusting. They've not been cleaned in a lot longer than that, and some of them are starting to get sticky. So maybe once every 6 months is a minimum. I'm probably a bit longer than that at the moment, which I'm very embarrassed about. Okay, so let's see. Steve has said, I feel like I have to set the harp further in my mouth to tongue block and bend. Yeah, you might feel that you have a slightly different position for the tongue blocking and bending, and the harmonica will be deeper in your mouth, because let's look at this. If I play just a lip pursed bend, and then I do it with the tongue block, and the harmonica's a lot deeper inside my mouth. So yeah, it will need to be a little bit deeper. Okay, so Graham's saying Jason Ritchie does loads of amazing YouTube lessons on very simple improv. Yes, check out Jason's lessons. Just in general, you definitely should. Fantastic lessons, and yeah, great improvisation ideas. Okay, so Jim has said, when you learn a piece, are you memorizing it or just learning to play it with ease? That's a great question, and it really depends on what the application is. So if I'm learning a tune, if I'm learning it to teach it, then I'm just learning to play it with ease. But if I'm learning it to have it in my repertoire, then I'm learning it to memorize it. I think realistically, as a musician, let's pretend I'm not a teacher, there's a lot more value in me learning less material but fully memorizing it than there is in me learning to play a bunch of stuff with ease. There's not a huge amount of value in that for me as a musician. As a teacher, just practically, sometimes you have to learn tons of material to teach what students want to learn, or YouTube lessons or whatever. You have to learn stuff very quickly. It's a little bit like cramming for an exam. You get used to that, and that is a skill in itself, but it's not great for you as a musician more than that. I think you get a lot more value out of learning, a tenth as many songs fully and memorizing them. And yeah, internalizing is the most important thing. You'll become a million times better as a player if you learn 10 songs really well versus 100 okay. And it comes back to that Bruce Lee quote of, I don't fear the man who's practiced 1,000 kicks once. I fear the man who's practiced one kick 1,000 times. And it's so true. It's all about really going deep on fewer things. And you can see that in so many players playing, really great players. They've generally had a focus on something. It's not about having giant repertoires and being great at absolutely everything. It's being hyper focused on a specific thing. Great question. Okay, so we've got a couple of minutes, so I'll take a couple of questions from YouTube, and then we will call it a day. So let's see. There's so many great questions. And so many nice comments. Joseph saying, big hug from Brazil to you. I'm your fan, my friend. Thank you very much, Joseph. I appreciate that. Let's see. Okay, so Don's asking a great question. How frequently are overbends / overblows used in the blues? Okay, this is a really important question to answer, because I think a lot of students hear the word overblow quite early on, and they think that it's something that they have to incorporate in their playing. And then when you listen to a lot of the old masters, and then when you listen to a lot of the new masters, you actually realize that so many people don't overblow at all. So many fantastic players never, ever, ever overblow in a blues context. So why has the overblow become so important? I really don't know. I mean, I think there are players like Howard Levy and Jason Ritchie and Konstantin Reinfeld who've done a lot to really push the cause of the overblow. And I think that that's fantastic. There is so much value. And Adam Gusso, obviously. I think Adam Gusso was one of the very earliest recording overblow players. Basically, most of the traditional blues that you hear, most of the Little Walter, Big Walter, Sonny Boy, First and Second, Carrie Bell, Paul Butterfield, etc., don't overblow. You might find some weird bootleg recording where you hear an overblow, but they're not overblowing. And if you want to play really good blues harmonica, you can do it without overblowing, and that's brilliant. What I found is I learned to overblow because there were specific notes that I really desperately wanted to be able to hit, and that was a good reason to learn how to overblow. But unless you have that really really specific requirement of I want to hit this note here, then ask yourself why you're learning to overblow. It's not the be-all end-all. And actually, even really good overblow players quite often don't overblow. They'll use alternative tuning harmonicas. So Todd Parrott, one of the best overblowing players on the planet, he can overblow with such control and finesse, and yet he chooses to play different tunings. He'll play a country-tuned harmonica. He'll play his own tuning, his Parrott tuning, to avoid playing overblows because it will sound better. So if someone who can play overblows that well chooses not to play them, even though they want to play that note, that should tell you something about how the overblow is overplayed as a thing. Now, don't get me wrong, I love overblows and I use them a lot, but that's I feel that it shouldn't be the be-all end-all. And I actually discovered so much about harmonica and the way it was traditionally played without overblows, which opened up so many interesting ideas. One of the key ones being going up into the upper octave in second position. Traditionally, people will switch from the blues scale when they get above hole 6 and start playing the major pentatonic scale, which is so cool. You get this kind of dark bluesy thing in the lower octave. And then they switch to the major pentatonic. That kind of sweet stuff. I threw one overblow in there. I apologize. But that kind of stuff, which is all major pentatonic, which is played because the overblow isn't easy, and so that's given you a whole different flavor. So I think it's important to think about that as well. Why do you want to overblow? And they're probably not frequently found in most blues playing. Okay, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for all of our guest viewers. It's been absolutely lovely seeing you. I'm sorry that I haven't answered every single question that came through. There are loads, but I really appreciate you joining in. And yeah, I do these live sessions every week in the school. So if you want to find out a little bit more about that, just click on the link in the description below. And to all of my current students, I will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining, and take it easy. Happy harping.